Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to have a discussion about the possibility of Blackout going free-to-play in the future. A lot has been made about yesterday's announcement regarding this. If you guys haven't heard, there's going to be a free trial for Blackout starting on January 17th, which means that anybody and everybody on the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and the PC can download Blackout free of charge and play it until January 24th. This does not mean that Blackout is going to be free permanently, however, because once the free trial is over, those people will not be able to play the game anymore, and chances are something's going to pop up on their screen which will encourage them to purchase the full game. But still, a free week is a free week, and who really knows what Activision may have planned for the future. I wanted to make this video here today because I personally do think that Blackout will eventually become free to play entirely, and I think that's a good thing for the game as a whole, but there's definitely a couple of downsides to that as well. The biggest downside would be players feeling like they're ripped off, which is something we never want to see here in the Call of Duty franchise. I've actually seen a lot of people saying that if Blackout goes free to play, they better get compensated, right? And then other people, more on the extreme end, are saying that Blackout better never go free to play because they bought it as part of a $60 game and it would take away from their value. I don't 100% agree with that, and I want to talk about that a bit here in today's video and talk about why Blackout going free to play would be the best thing for the Call of Duty franchise going forward. I feel like Blackout being free would help players across the board, right? Because while yes, it's a bit off-putting to talk about making 1/3 of a full-price game become free to play, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for the people that did buy the game at full price. I mean, for starters, when we all bought Black Ops 4, we bought an entire game, right? Sure, some people will say that they only bought the game for Blackout, but you still bought the entire game, right? Choosing not to utilize multiplayer and zombies is your choice, but you can't act like you spent $60 and only got access to Blackout, because only playing Blackout, you're actively choosing not to participate in the rest of the game's content, and it's not the game's fault that you spend $60 to only play $20 worth of its total content, right? Also, it's not as if game bundles and special deals are anything new. I mean, just recently, well, somewhat recently, Activision released a special edition of Black Ops 4 on the PC that is only $40, but the reason why it's only $40 is because it only includes multiplayer and Blackout. This was a couple of months after the game came out, so it wasn't like they sprung this on fans out of nowhere right after they spent full price on the game, and the same would be presumably true if Blackout were to go free to play. As of right now, Black Ops 4 is over 3 months old, which means we're about 30% or so into the game's 1-year life cycle, and they are just now starting to experiment with the idea of a free trial. This means that if Blackout were to go completely free to play later on down the line, it would likely be 5 or 6 or so months into the game's life cycle, which in my opinion is well past the statute of limitations when we're talking about launch day prices. In the past, we've also seen a bunch of other bundles like this, and these kinds of bundles aren't even exclusive to the Call of Duty franchise. They are just things that happen in the gaming industry. When you buy a game at full price at launch, you're doing so knowing that in the future, there will be special deals, there will be special bundles, and there are going to be changes that are made to the overall business model. This is not to say that we should not be compensated in one way or another for actually buying it before it went free to play, but I'm just saying this is actually a pretty common practice in the gaming industry. It's just kind of something that you have to accept, and it's very similar, in my opinion, to Black Friday deals, right? We paid $60 for the game at launch, or at least a lot of us did, but on Black Friday, 1 month later, the game was $30. Do we get outraged about that? Do we demand that no sales ever happen whatsoever because we paid more for the game at one point? I've actually seen a lot of people saying that this isn't really a fair comparison. I've actually talked about this quite a lot in the comments of my previous video, as well as, of course, over on Twitter, but I honestly do think this is a pretty fair comparison, because making 1/3 of a $60 game free to play is pretty much the same as lowering the price of the game by $20. A free Blackout is basically like a glorified sale, though I do get that's a little bit different because players don't have to purchase the other 2/3 of the game, but still, it's a pretty fair comparison in my opinion, because if you think about it, making Blackout free means that multiplayer and zombies are only worth $40, which lines up with the bundle that we find over there on PC, so it effectively takes the value of the rest of the game and drops it down to $40 as compared to $60. It's basically taking the stuff that you paid full price for it back in October and lowering the value of it by $20, which is pretty much what a sale would do, right? It's still a strange situation. I get that, considering, games going free to play is not uncommon in the gaming industry, but the idea of 1/3 of a game going free to play isn't something that happens every day. If this were to happen, it would be a situation that's pretty much exclusive to the Call of Duty franchise and maybe a couple of other games I'm not aware of, but even then, I still do think this would be good for the franchise as a whole, because looking at the big picture here, a free-to-play Blackout may actually be a really good thing for the Call of Duty franchise that sets a very important precedent for the series going forward. What we learned from Black Ops 3 when they did that little experiment where they made Black Ops 3 completely free to download on the PlayStation 4 for a month is that the overall player count and the overall downloads quadrupled. And remember, we're talking Call of Duty numbers here, right? We're not talking about some indie darling that had a few thousand people but now has like 10,000 people. We're talking about the best-selling game of 2015, which sold tens of millions of copies already, quadrupling its downloads and its players because it went free to play. That was a huge influx of new players, and if that were to happen to Blackout, there would be a trickle-down effect to the rest of the Black Ops 4 experience. Not only would Blackout be full of players, which would speed up queue times and improve the overall connectivity, especially in those far and off-away regions where, if you guys don't know, without getting too far into it, in some of the off-the-way regions, there's only one Blackout mode entirely because there's not enough people in that region actually playing, and therefore those people really suffer with long queue times, and they can only play in one mode, right? They can't choose between solos, duos, and squads. They basically only have to play solos no matter what. They can't even play with their friends. Well, if the game were to go free to play, that would pretty much fix that, right? And it would also improve the overall connectivity across all regions, including North America as well as EU. And if all these new players like what they see when they're playing this new free-to-play Blackout, they may be tempted to buy the rest of the game. Now, like I mentioned earlier, on the PC platform, there's that bundle where you can get multiplayer and Blackout for only $40. Well, picture a world where Blackout is free to play on all platforms, and there's a special bundle where players can upgrade their game for $40 to get access to the multiplayer and zombies. This would effectively cut the overall price of the game down by 1/3, which would be fantastic, but because this is Activision we're talking about, I don't think that would ever happen. If a special bundle like that were to exist, I imagine it would be $50, and maybe they would cut away some of the content you could actually utilize in Blackout. Like, if Blackout were to go completely free, I can see them doing something like they make it so you can only use certain specialists. Maybe you can't level up while it's free to play, or maybe you can't unlock certain skins while it's free to play, or access the armory. Maybe things like that would be taken away in the free version, which would encourage people to actually upgrade and buy the full version of Blackout as well as the rest of the game. We really have no idea, but that's something they could definitely do, and this is Activision we're talking about. But either way you look at it, having more people in Blackout would no doubt result in more people therefore getting into the multiplayer and getting into zombies, which would be good for the community as a whole. Not to mention, the overall accessibility would be great for the game as well. I already mentioned how in those off and away regions, it would really be good for them. They could actually have more than one game mode, but it would also be easier than ever for you, like the average COD fan, to have your brother play with you, or your cousin, or your friend who plays games but maybe doesn't own Call of Duty. Having a free-to-play Blackout would get a lot of new eyes on the Call of Duty franchise, which again would be good for the series as a whole and good for the community as a whole. Just all in all, I think this is a really good idea. I do get that some people will still disagree with this because they paid full price for the game and they don't want 1/3 of that game going free to play. And even though I completely disagree with that standpoint, I do see where you guys are coming from. Looking past launch sales though, and looking at the big picture, it would be incredible for Blackout to go free to play, and there's really no downside to it aside from, once again, people being upset that they bought the game at full price at launch. I actually have heard some people saying that if the game were to go free to play, then maybe they would super embrace a free to play business model. But if you think about it, they've already done that, right? I mean, Activision has found a way to implement a free to play business model in pretty much every Call of Duty game for the past half decade, and the prices of the skins for Blackout as well as the rest of the game are already pretty high. We're talking $8 to $10 for different skins here, and I don't see them really increasing the price of those skins just because the game went free to play. If anything, if they make the game free to play and it triples or quadruples the player base, they're going to make more money that way from microtransactions than they would from people actually straight up buying the game, because when people buy a full $60 game, they are not nearly as likely to buy microtransactions. That's just kind of a fact, right? I mean, you look at free-to-play games out there, people are more than happy to drop $200, $300, $400, $500 on skins and cosmetics because in their mind, it's justified because it's a free-to-play game, which is definitely a bit of a fallacy, but you can see where those people are coming from, right? All in all, I feel as though Blackout going free-to-play would be the right move, though they probably shouldn't do it right now. Maybe wait a month, wait 2 months or something like that, but in the end, I do feel as though that would be the right move, though I do completely agree that if they were to ever do this in the future, Treyarch should release some sort of a special skin and camo set for the players who actually got in early and actually got it when the game was paid for. Sort of like a Founders Edition set or something like that. Maybe throw in some special tags and some emotes, maybe throw in some extra things as well. But of course, we're getting pretty far ahead of ourselves here. All I do know is that if Blackout does go free to play, expecting $20 refunds from a company like Activision seems incredibly unlikely. I can definitely see a situation where if maybe the game goes free to play in July, that maybe people that bought the game in June would be entitled to some sort of a refund or something like that. But there's definitely going to be a statute of limitations there, right? I'm very interested to see how this is going to play out. I mean, you could look at Fortnite, for example. That game had a refund policy for the people that bought the game for Battle Royale right before it went free to play, but there was a limitation on that, right? You couldn't go back like 8 or 10 months or something like that and then demand your money back. There was a limit. So I imagine the same thing would happen here in the Call of Duty franchise, but once again, we are getting way ahead of ourselves here. All we know for sure is that starting on Thursday, January 17th, Blackout is going to start its free trial on all platforms. Then that trial is going to be ending in 1 week on Thursday, January 24th. Outside of that, we really have no idea what Activision has planned for the future, though I would like to say it makes complete sense for Blackout to eventually go free to play before Infinity Ward's next game comes out. A big question for a lot of us is just what does Treyarch have planned for Black Ops 4 after its first year life cycle is over? But that's really a question I don't think we're going to get an answer to until November or even December, or who knows, maybe even 2020. Usually we can look into the past and draw some conclusions from that, but this has never happened before in the Call of Duty franchise. We've never had a Battle Royale mode. We've never had a Battle Royale mode giving out free trials, and we've definitely never had a developer outright saying that the game is going to be heavily supported for 3 straight years. The future is wide open for Black Ops 4, and the possibility for Blackout going free to play is very much real, which is what I wanted to discuss a bit here in today's video. But ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much all I have for you guys here today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments. Would you be happy about Blackout going free to play? Do you plan on playing the free to play week? Because, man, it's gonna be like Christmas noobs times 5 in the Blackout game mode. It's gonna be really interesting. And would you be open to the possibility of more things in the Call of Duty franchise going free to play in the future? Why or why not? Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments. Thank you guys all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.